Hi everyone, this is Diane. Thank you for coming back to my channel. We're going to be talking some more about how to make a very simple journal. So this is journal making for beginners, or if you just want a little refresher on how to do a simple journal, and then we'll be doing some simple pockets and tags and things like that. But before I get back into the journals, let me just share some things I should have shared yesterday, like basic supplies. I was thinking of a person who really doesn't have a lot of supplies and doesn't want to go out and buy a lot of supplies until they try out the craft and see if it's something suited to them. So we're doing very minimal supplies. Maybe you are someone that has been accumulating supplies, because that's one of the favorite things of a crafter, is accumulating supplies. And now that you have some, you don't know what to do with them. So, I can talk a little bit about various supplies we can use in addition to the basics, but I don't want to confuse things, so I'm pretty much sticking to basics. So I think the basics that you need to get started would be, of course, paper, cardstock. You can get solid cardstock and patterned cardstock, and you can get lined paper like notebook paper, and you can get patterned paper, all kinds of paper. You can use book pages and cereal boxes. Cereal boxes and cracker boxes could be your covers or your tags, or both. You can leave them as they are, or you can cover them. I should have mentioned that, because that's something that's right in your pantry. You'll need some sort of adhesive if you're going to be adding pockets and embellishments. What we did yesterday with this journal, I said this journal was complete as it was if you didn't want to add anything to it. I didn't need adhesives for this. I just sewed it together with my needle and thread, and no adhesive was used. But if you want to embellish, which I think most junk journalers want to do some embellishment, you can use a glue stick. I use Elmer's Extra Strength Craft Bond. And you can use a wet glue, and I use both of these, Fabri-Tac. And I just started using Bearly Art. I'm trying that out in place of the Art Glitter Glue. This has a very, very small nozzle, but so does Art Glitter Glue. But this is a little bit cheaper, I believe. I got it from Amazon. Also, this nozzle is too big, so most crafters put this into an icing bottle with a fine tip. But there's a hole in that, so you have to plug the hole with a rust-proof pin, and that is a knitting needle cap. I'm not really, this video is not to talk about supplies in depth. I'm just showing how to put the thing together. But supplies are an important part of it. Another thing that you might need is a paper trimmer. You can cut your paper with a ruler and scissors, but a paper trimmer is really going to make your job so much easier. It's well worth the money. So I would suggest selecting a paper trimmer and some extra blades so that you have them on hand when you realize that your paper trimmer isn't cutting like it should. You don't have to wait for new blades. You can just swap it out. This is a Fiskars. That's what I'm using. And I'm not here to recommend any specific type. Also, you will need scissors. I have a large pair and a small pair. This is Fiskars titanium non-stick scissor. It works really, really well. Slices through paper very nicely. And then the little one for fine cutting, and this one is from EK Tools. This is my very favorite for cutting the fine details. And then to put it together, we need the needle that I discussed in yesterday's video with the big enough eye for the waxed thread to go through. So you need a needle and a waxed thread, and you need a hole poker to poke holes in your signature. You could probably poke holes with your needle, but it's really hard to hold a little needle and get the leverage you need to poke a hole. So I recommend something like this. This is from Tim Holtz by Tonic Studios. For your covers and your tags, you can, as I said, I've used pattern paper, and I've used a file folder that I covered with wallpaper, but you could cover it with any kind of paper or just paint it or stamp on it. You don't have to cover it. And as I just said, you can use cracker boxes, and there are things that come in your junk mail that you can use. Also for tags, you can use junk mail. You can use envelopes and cardstock things that come in your junk mail. Some beyond the basic supplies that I recommend are circle punches. I have some in various sizes. This is 1 1/4, and I use this a lot. So, but you can get some smaller and some larger circle punches. Corner rounder, I use mine all the time, just to round the corners on my cards and things. Some trims and laces are very nice to have. These are spools you can easily get at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, any craft or fabric store. You can get trims. I also love to get rickrack. I have a large collection of rickrack, and most of this came from flea markets. But you can buy rickrack in the stores just where you can get the laces. And other kinds of trims and laces you can get. And ribbons. I use ribbons, like some sort of ribbon, like a seam binding. Sari silk is cut into a ribbon. And just satin ribbons and whatnot to put into your tags. And speaking of tags, if you're making your own tags, which we are doing in this project, you don't need a hole punch, but it's nice if you want to have a hole to put ribbon through. Just an office hole punch. And reinforcements. So just some plain reinforcements. If you have ink supplies, you can color your reinforcements in different colors. So another basic supply would be a brown ink and a black ink. This one, another one of my hole punches. It's a big one. So that is the supply list I should have run through with you yesterday. So yesterday this is the journal we're making together. And I had all these other sizes. We talked about the different sizes of the covers yesterday. So you can go back and watch that video. I'm making a playlist of journal making for beginners. So this is one we're going to make together. And we sewed this on the video with a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. Off camera, I sewed these 3 together also with the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. When it came to this tall skinny one, I decided I needed to use the 5-hole pamphlet stitch, so I saved that for you. We're going to do this together, and then we're going to talk about pockets and tuck spots in here. And we'll make some. So I need my pokey tool, and I'm not measuring again in this, I'm just going to poke. So this is the center of my page and of my signature. This signature is 10 and 5/8 inches tall. But I'm not measuring, I'm just telling you that that's what it is. And it's 8 inches across, so 4 inches per side. So I'm just going to find the center. Just eyeball it. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to poke a hole right there. I already have my pages assembled together and clipped, as you can see. We did that in the video yesterday. So I didn't want to waste time doing that. So here's the center hole. I want 2 more holes here and 2 here. So 5 holes altogether. So I'm kind of looking for right here, like in between where, well, let's put this hole in because we'll just come down a little bit from the top here. So now I have this point and I kind of want to be in the center. So I'll just put it right there. And if it really mattered, I would measure, but it doesn't. now I have 5 holes punched in there. I already threaded my needle with white waxed thread, and in yesterday's video I left a link for the collection of colored threads that I got. Remember, I showed this on the video. So I had left a link for those and also for this large neutral colored one. Yesterday I sewed it so that the knot is on the outside. Today I'm going to do it so the knot is on the inside. So I'm starting on the inside. I'm going to poke it right down into the middle hole and come up. Leave a nice long tail. It doesn't have to be that long, but if you want to have something dangling out of your journal, you're going to want it probably longer than that even. I probably won't do that with this one, so I just want it long enough so that I'm not risking pulling it out completely of the book. Then you can either go up to the next hole or down to the next hole, it doesn't matter. So I'm going down and coming back up into the center, and then just make sure you pull it nice and tight. And then go down, keep going in the same direction, down to the next hole, and come out the outside. Now, on the outside, I'm going to go back up to the next hole. We've already come up through this hole, and now we're going to go down through this hole. You can see I have 2 stitches right there. Instead of going back into the center hole, I'm going to bypass it, go up to the next hole, and I just keep pulling my threads, the tail and this one that's being sewn, in opposite directions as I go to make sure each stitch is nice and tight. And it will loosen up some as you're working, but just keep tightening it till you're done. So now we're on the outside again, and I'm going to go into that last hole and come up on the inside. We're almost done already. I'm going to go back down into this hole to complete this step, this stitch. And now the only thing left to do is come back up into the middle. That completes that stitch. And as I said in yesterday's video, you want to come up, if I can get it in there. Why is it being difficult? Okay, you want to come up on the opposite side of this long thread from this one. So this one is on the left hand side of the thread, so I want to come up on the right side of the thread. Make sure everything is tight. Just take a look and you don't see any loose stitches. So we can go ahead and tie these threads, and because they're on opposite sides of the center thread, it's tying that. It's tying right over that to contain it. And the wax thread, when you pull it tight like I just did, it holds. It's very hard to get it untied because that wax just grips. I have gotten threads before that I wanted to use that weren't waxed. So you can buy wax in the quilt shops or the fabric stores in their notions supplies, and then you can just take your length of thread, whatever thread you're using, and just run it through the wax. But I like just having the wax thread ready to use. So now I can unclip this, And this journal is all sewn together with a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. So now let's talk about pockets. Move my sewing stuff out of the way. Forgot my needle. Okay, now set these aside because this is the one that we are making together. And I have some plain pockets prepped. I'm not going to talk about the cards and tags in this journal, in this video, I'm sorry. That'll be in the next video. So for using minimal supplies, and we cut paper to size to make these journals, so the easiest thing to do, I'm going to put these inks away because I probably won't be using them. The easiest thing to use is the cut off pieces. Because this paper and this paper were not 12 by 12s, I didn't have a lot of cut off from these. So I did get some papers out of my scraps. But if you've been doing paper crafts for a while, you have a lot of scraps. So that is the easiest thing to start making your pockets with. So this wasn't used in any of these journals, but it's a scrap that I like, the contrast here, so I decided I'm just going to use this here. Let me see what I did in this one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a piece of trim across the top there. If you don't have trims, you could take a little strip of paper, one of the paper scraps, just trim that a little narrower if you want, or leave it big, and make a decoration, or you don't have to add any decoration to it. But I think I'd like to add a piece of rickrack. I have this gray, kind of a blue gray. Don't think so. Looks better at this end because there's more white up here. But let's try pink, since it's on a pink paper. I think I like the pink. I liked them both, so either one would have been fine. This is kind of folded under, so rather than mess with that, I'm just going to cut it off. I don't want to try to glue those little tips down. Because they're really creased and they will fight me. I don't want to deal with that on a video. So I'm just going to use my Fabri-Tac and glue this piece of pink rickrack down. I did make some pockets in the other journals that I'm making along with this. I cut other covers so you could see different sizes, but I just want to focus on this so I don't confuse people. But I will show you progress that's being made on those other ones. Because when these are all done, these will all go in my shop. So I may end up doing a little bit more embellishing than I would put in junk journaling for beginners video, but then again, I may not. It all depends on how we end up here. So now I could leave it just like that, and we have a pocket. I had a tag in there, did I not? Maybe not. I didn't want to do the tags anyway. I was just going to put it back in there so I didn't lose it. I think this is it. I'm not even going to discuss that right now. So I could put an embellishment on here or just leave it. But let's do an embellishment. So for embellishments, I am not using any sewing, and I am not using any die cuts or digitals, because maybe you don't have a printer and maybe you don't have the die cutting machines, because they can be expensive. You can take scrapbook paper and cut elements out of the scrapbook paper and use them for embellishments. Magazines, books. Most people have access to children's books. You can buy them inexpensively, especially if you have thrift stores near you. So I brought in my collections of children's book illustrations. Also, you can use other kinds of book pages. You can use botanical books, just the text from books. This is going to be pretty limited because I don't have much space here. So this collection is illustrations of children. There's a little boy playing with his soldiers with his castle right there. I think that's cute. Let's just make sure that's what we want. This one is a little girl bending over her roses. I like that. I'm going to cut it out a little bit better so I can see. Now these are very vintage book illustrations that I'm using that I get at flea markets. And many of you don't have access to the flea markets like I do, because you tell me that in your comments. And I know I'm very fortunate with all of the wonderful finds that I get at flea markets. But just look at flea markets and yards, or not flea markets, thrift stores and yard sales for children's books. Or any other kind of book you want to cut up. Yeah, I like that. I think I'll use that one. So this is about as simple as you can get for making a pocket. Just cut a scrap of scrapbook paper, put a little trim or a strip of paper at the top of it, and then glue on a picture. Gift wrap. You could, if you found some inexpensive gift wrap with really cute pictures on it that you could cut out, you would get a whole bunch of pictures from one piece of gift wrap. I have 4 pockets to go in here. The next one is going on this book page, and it's another scrapbook piece. Now these are cardstock, lightweight cardstock, but they make nice pockets. So I'm just going to glue that there. I used my hole punch to punch a notch in there. That's not necessary, but I did. It's one of the things you can use hole punches for. And you can embellish that, but you don't have to. Let me see if I did it in this one. I did not. It's got enough pretty pattern on it, you can leave it plain. And again, we'll talk about that later, that tag. Okay, the next pocket is right here. It's another book page. And it's just text here. And it's white over here. So I'm going to add some color by using this scrap of paper. For this, I think I will embellish it with a strip of contrasting paper. Just looking at my cut off pieces here. I do have some strip pieces. Where did I put them? Here they are. They got buried. That one's not quite long enough. The color is good. See, that one wouldn't be enough contrast. That would be a fun one. But I think there's too much white in it because this has a white background. About something dark like that. I'm going to cut a thin strip of this. This is just a little over 8 inches long. So that's a pretty thin strip. But it's enough to provide a contrast between this sort of light paper and this light background. Now, let me talk about the embellishment of the pages while I'm gluing this together. If you watch my channel a lot, you know that I do all of the embellishing, or most of the embellishing, before I sew the journal together. I do quite a bit of sewing in my journals, so I want that done before I sew it together, before I sew the signatures into the cover. And it's just easier to work on the pages if they're not sewn into the journal. But I'm doing it this way because I left a little bit of a border on that. I'm doing it this way because I wanted to show you that that first step of just cutting and folding the pages and sewing them into the cover was enough to create a complete journal. That was complete. Now we're just adding some extras. Since I'm not doing any sewing, I was able to get away with that. Also, stamping. I like to stamp on some of the pages, and I'm not stamping in these journals because maybe you don't have stamps. And it's much easier to stamp on a page that's not, attached to a bunch of other pages. And then the last pocket I'm going to put back here, and this is an angled pocket. I will show you what I did in the other journal, so you'll see what our goal is. It's a little squared off up here, and then an angle, and then squared here. How do I do that? Well, this is a scrap of paper I'm going to use. I don't know which side, probably this side. Yeah, let's get it where we want it, on the right side, so we're cutting it the right way. Of course, I'll trim the white off. So I mark it, or measure it, whatever, but I'm just going to mark it. I don't want it too close to the fold, so I'm going to mark it here, so it's about a 1/2 inch away, I think. And how high do I want it to go? Well, it can't be any higher than this because that's where the paper's torn. That's probably a little higher than I need anyway, so I'm just going to mark it here. So I have a mark here and here for the width and the height of the pocket. I'm going to trim off that white first of all. Now I'm going to trim it across the top because that is the height of the pocket. And then to get the angle, I don't want it right to the point here. So I'm going to, I don't usually have to mark it, but I'm going to mark it here. I want a little bit of a squared off piece, like another 1/2 inch there. And then down here, yeah, I better cut this part off, this edge too, to get the right width. I got the right height, but we need the right width too. Okay. So I want it to be a little bit like a 1/2 inch of space up here, and then maybe a little bit more down here. Let's see what I did there. It's about 3/4 of an inch high down here. So then I put it on my trimmer so that this mark and this mark are lined up on this line, the cutting line. So I can see my mark here, and then I have to swivel this around and I see my mark here, here, and here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, accurate. It's just a guide. So there's my angled pocket. And I can glue that right there. I could glue this edge so it is completely closed in and it's a pocket, but because this space is narrow, I'm going to leave this part open so you have more give when you're putting your things in and out. So I'm just going to put glue at the bottom and the side. And not on that little side. So those are 3 types of pockets. A pocket that just goes straight across, and a pocket, there's another one that goes straight across, and then a pocket that goes where is it? Vertically. Where's my vertical pocket? We did one, didn't we? Yeah, right here. The vertical pocket. And then the diagonal pocket. So we can embellish this, but it has to be something specific, you know. The size has to kind of be, has to fit in there. I found the perfect children's book illustration for this. Let's see what we can find for this one. So we have Make Time for Art. We have this beautiful girl with the flower, and it has an art kind of a theme. There's a little girl with her roses, and there's nursery rhyme images, lace. So those are kind of what we've gone with so far in this book. And eclectic is good. I don't ever have a problem with eclectic. Just kind of want things to not be too jarring, not too jarringly different. Like this guy is really cute, and he'd be adorable on there. And it's a possibility. It doesn't really go with anything else we've put in there, except the black and white, because we had that black and white. Oh, this is nice too. I had already punched this out, but you might not have punches, so I don't want to use it. The black and white pocket, the checked pocket that I used, is what I was trying to say. I got distracted. It happens easily. That would be great, except she's so big. If that was shrunk down, that would be a great shape for this pocket. These actually came from a sewing pattern. Vintage sewing patterns. If you have an image that you really want on the pocket, it would be a good idea to cut your pocket to fit the image. Oh, she's really cute. She's on stiff paper, so that could work, her sticking off the paper, but probably won't use that. And that could stick off a little bit too. That's a possibility. These little porcelain figures are just a little too big. She's perfect. Okay, so most of these are book pages, but those little porcelain, well, they're book pages too. Little porcelain figures were from a book of, that a collector would have, not a children's book. I think we're just going to go with something that we've already pulled so we don't waste too much time looking. Sometimes it's really fun for me to look through all my stuff and find just the perfect embellishment, but it's hard to do that when I'm on camera because I don't want to take too much time. So I really like this little guy, but I don't think we'll use him. It's a more feminine looking journal, so I like her. And that's cute. It kind of looks like he's coming out from behind this pocket thing. And he's sturdy enough that I could do that. Let's do that. That's cute. I don't want to get glue on the paper because I may have glued up too far on that. I think I did pretty good, but you never know. Yep, there's a little bit of glue on that paper now. That's cute. Okay, now let me show you what I did in the other journals. I didn't finish putting pockets in all of the journals. This is the other one that is the same size and from the same paper pad. Jane Davenport paper pad. So here's this pocket. And this was cut from a children's book. These flowers, and there were, I don't know, it was an illustration of kids or animals, and I just cut the flowers from around the illustration. And I added some pink rickrack. I punched out, with my circle punch, I punched out this yellow background piece because this was just kind of blending into that. And I did use some of my vintage photo ink. So I mentioned ink would be one of your top things to purchase beyond the basics. And this is what most junk journalers have. The vintage photo is the name of the color of distress ink or distress oxide. And then I just use this applicator to put the ink around the edge, but you can actually just take your piece and just go like that on it, you know. So that's something that most junk journalers have. And we'll work on this some more in tomorrow's video, the tag part. The next pocket in here is another one right at the bottom, and I just punched a hole in it. And it's scrapbook paper, but it shows a map. And here is the side pocket, and I cut this strip from scrapbook paper. I had it right here, but you know, it was just here it is. Just a bunch of rulers. So I just cut one of the skinny rulers and put that there because there's just so much color here. So I put something neutral and darker there to differentiate. And then there is the slanted pocket. These flowers came from the same book as those flowers. And I just tucked a couple pieces in there. We'll talk about them tomorrow. And this is a heavier cardstock. So they all have the same sorts of pockets. For this one, I used a pretty cardstock piece and a rickrack with gold in it. And just that cardstock piece with a little thumb hole punched in it. Another cardstock piece with some lace on the edge. And then the angled piece. I didn't embellish these, as you can see, but that is just, it looks like white wood. So I can, and this is a bigger slanted pocket, so I'll have more leeway with putting something on that one. But it's crying out for something. It's so plain looking. This one, made with the file folder, has, again, the black and white diamond with the black rickrack, and I selected pieces but didn't glue them down because I figured we would do that on the video, but I am running short of time here. But it won't take long to glue these pieces. These pieces, these black and white, they look like engravings. They were cut from a book. It's a vintage book, but it was, forgot what they're called. You could make copies of the stuff. And I thought it just looked elegant. So I did the same here with a strip of a border from that book, and then this is from that same porcelain book that the little girls came from. Again, the engraving book and some lace. I guess I did glue, I just didn't do the first one. And this one, I guess I used the engraving on all four pockets, and this one I added a little piece of pink behind it, and I inked around it with the vintage photo ink. So this book that we just sewed together, I didn't do anything to make the pockets yet. So I'll do that. I will embellish all the pockets before the next video. Well, I think I did all of these. So I have to embellish some, including the ones that I put in here. I'll have that step all done before we start looking at the inserts and other embellishments that we can make with minimal supplies and a simple process, nothing too complicated. I hope you're enjoying this. Oh, someone did ask a question from my first video, and that was, do I cut my papers, my pages, one at a time, or do I mass cut them? I cut them one at a time. Once in a while, if I have some scrapbook paper that's the same size, I can, and it's thin, I can do that two at a time. But mostly I cut my paper one at a time. So it is a process, but it goes through a lot quicker than you think it will. Unless you're doing 5 at once. So yes, keep asking me questions and I'll try to answer. I answered her, as a comment on her question, as a reply, but I'll answer the questions on video also, in case you were wondering the same thing and didn't ask. I do appreciate your attention, and I hope that you are learning things from this and that you are losing your fear or intimidation to get started on making a journal for yourself. Because after all, it's only paper. So if you mess up, you can, scrap that paper, use it for something else, and start over again. It's not a big deal. So just try it. Just start. And then let me know if you've ventured into that. And let me know what you're doing. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you very soon. Have a creative day today. Bye-bye.